You're listening to Mondays with Matt. I'm Matt Reynolds, the founder and CEO of Barbell Logic and Turnkey Coach. Each week, I share lessons from decades of lifting, coaching, and business to help you get stronger, coach better, and take action. Let's dive in. Happy Monday, everybody. This is Mondays with Matt. I am your host, Matt. I'm here with my good friend today, Blake from Dominion Belts. What's up, man? It's been a while since you've been on the show.
How's it going, Matt? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. I'm glad to have you. So probably a lot of our listeners and watchers are familiar with you, and I love Dominion Belts. This is all I've used for, probably pushing 10 years now, at least 8 years. Your belts are I've got a plethora of your belts. But for those that don't know you, let's just take a few minutes and walk me through, like, how did you begin making lifting belts and starting, like, what's the kind of the creation story of Dominion Strength Training?
Yeah, so coming up around September this year, we'll have been doing this right at 10 years. So 10 years ago, I was still a mechanical engineer and working as a mechanical engineer and lifting weights because I just love to do it. And pretty soon needing a weightlifting belt came up as something that I needed. And that started this long process of looking around, what is a good weightlifting belt? Who makes them? All those kind of things. And I was, surprised by the limited number of options if you wanted something quick or you wanted something that was high quality, something made in the USA. And so that started this process of, well, this seems not too dissimilar from stuff I do in my engineering job. Maybe this is something I could source, have somebody make for me. Maybe it's something that I could make. So it started as basically a side project that got wildly out of control, as you can see.
So you were in Atlanta, is that right?
Right. Yeah.
And you're in the Orlando area now, is that correct?
Yeah, we're on the East Coast, kind of straight east from
Okay.
Orlando.
Got it.
Yeah, closer to Daytona, a little south of there.
Got it. And so, man, 10 years now. And so you're a full fledged operating business at this point. So let's talk a little bit about when somebody looks for a belt and you get to that spot. So I have a ton of clients that are newer clients that really haven't lifted in the past. And so they're just starting to get to that point now where they need a belt, or they're starting to get to that point where they need a belt. What are the things they should look for? And on top of that, and it's fine to kind of promote your own business, like, what's the difference between what you guys do with a belt and what you're going to get at Amazon or a big box, sporting goods store or even Rogue? What's the difference? Like, what should we be looking for when we look for a good, solid lifting belt?
Yeah, so even backing up from Dominion belts, I think the first most important thing is the materials that the belt is made out of. If it's not made out of something that is very rigid in tension, meaning the belt's not going to stretch when you brace against it, or it's made out of something that's going to wear out,
Yep.
The belt is not going to do what you need it to do, at least not for very long. So you want to look for things like top grain leather, full grain leather, things that are very durable leathers and also very strong. At Dominion, that's, of course, all we use. So that's one of the things you would look for. The reason you see a lot of these much less expensive belts, especially on Amazon, you'll see a belt for $45 or something like that. That'll be made out of something called split leather. And that's the very bottom part of the hide. It's the least structural leather. It has legitimate uses, but I don't think a leather weightlifting belt is one of them for two reasons. One, it will do the one thing I think a weightlifting belt is not supposed to do, and that is stretch.
Right.
You go to brace against it, the belt doesn't stay rigid. It can move out of the way. And the second thing is that weaker leather will wear out over time. So if you've ever seen belts where, like a prong belt, where the prong is actually torn from one hole to the other, and when that happens, the belt's kind of useless if that's the hole you need. So
yeah, absolutely.
That can happen on those cheaper belts. So that's the first most important thing I would say is the material the belt's made out of.
And then what about the thickness of the belt? What do you guys offer at Dominion, and what kind of thickness should we be looking for?
So this is actually a trend that we've been seeing over the last couple of years, that things are trending towards thinner belts.
Yep.
Like, instead of a thick, 13 millimeter or 10 millimeter, we're doing so many more single ply belts, which is just a single piece of nice veg tan leather. and that'll run, anywhere 6 to 7 millimeters. We've been seeing that. We've been seeing a lot of thinner belts in terms of belt width. There are some months we make more 2.5 inch belts
Wow.
than we make 4 inch belts, which I would not have believed maybe 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah.
But those are definitely trends we're seeing. I think the single ply belt that we make, that's the 6 to 7 millimeter, that's the minimum standard that will do what you need it to do, in that it won't stretch when you brace against it, and it won't wear out. You won't have problems with holes tearing apart or anything like that. So the 6 to 7 millimeter single ply, that would be the minimum you're looking for. And then we have, plenty of 10 millimeter double ply belts, and different things like that.
Yeah, in my early days of powerlifting, everybody wore 4-inch, 13 millimeter belts. I mean, just giant, thick belts. And I moved to a 10, and I like a 10. And then I've got a few. I think I've got 2 of your 6 to 7 millimeter. And I really like those, especially for deadlifts as well. For me, I guess because I'm old school, I still like the 4-inch belt for presses and squats, but I love the 3-inch belt for a deadlift. Gives me a little more room to get some air into my lungs. It's not quite so binding when I bend over. So for a lot of my clients, when they start with a belt, the first thing I'll have them do is actually press with it. It's the easiest thing to learn, right? So they're not having to ever bend over at the waist, and they do that for a couple sessions, and then we add it to the squat, where they put the belt on the squat, so they're standing up, so it's a little more comfortable. But then they ride that bar down into the hole, it gets tight, and then come back up. And the last one I actually have them move it towards is the deadlift, and the bench is kind of up. And like, if you want to wear a belt for the bench, it's fine. You don't have to. Your spine's not really loaded. Some people like it for the Valsalva, kind of pushing against the belt to be able to do that. It's totally fine too, but it's unnecessary for the bench press. So start with the press, then move to the squat, and then to the deadlift. So I guess my next question is, like, why do we use a belt in the first place? And I know that's kind of putting you on the spot, but I assume you've answered this question before. So why do we use them? Like, what's the purpose of a good weightlifting belt? When, for people who, especially some of my clients who tend to want to lift barefoot or, have like minimal type equipment, why is
Sure.
it? And they'll often say, like, you'll hear a belt is a crutch, or, a belt might make my torso or my midsection weak because I'll lean on the belt. Like, why is that not true? What is it there for?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, because I've certainly heard that a belt could be a crutch. I think of a belt as a training aid, in the same way that a barbell is a training
That's right,
aid.
yeah.
It helps us do something that we couldn't do without it. We could go in our backyard and look for heavy things to pick up and do that, but it would be hard to load that incrementally. It'd be hard to do it safely, have a good back position and all that. So the belt specifically, anytime you're doing a lift, you're going to brace. So before you unrack the bar, before you get set to pull something off the floor, you're going to set your back, you're going to take your breath, you hold it, and you're going to brace. If you do that without wearing anything, your midsection is going to expand out a little bit when you take that breath. If instead you have a rigid weightlifting belt around your midsection, when you take that breath, your midsection can't go out. That pressure gets directed internally.
Yep.
And that brace, that contraction that you can create with the belt on, is greater than with the belt off.
That's right.
So you're going to have a lot easier time keeping your back set exactly as it should be, throughout the performance of the lift.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that, because it's really a paradigm shift from people that see the belt as a crutch. It's not only is it not a crutch, it actually helps you set your back better. It helps you set your torso better. It helps you set your abs better, right? It locks everything in. It's like a band on a whiskey barrel, right? That whiskey barrel's pushing out against that band. That band's holding it in place, and it just makes it all the more stable. And so we want stability when there's wiggle and movement, and belly's pushing out in the middle of a lift. That's an energy leak, and a belt avoids the energy leak, so that the force can be transmitted from the floor through your feet, through your body, through your torso, and into the barbell, which is why I love using them, and why I always want to use them, and why I frequently am pleading with my clients that don't have them to get one. So, I mean, for me, the absolute minimum for most people are weightlifting shoes and belt, and both of them come about the same time, pretty similar to the same time. And so shoes have a little more variance. Belts, again, I always steer, people will get the Velcro, I don't know, the Velcro nylon belts.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to stretch over time. The Velcro is going to wear out. If you've ever had a pair of wrist straps and you've worn them for a few years, you only get a few years out of wrist straps because the Velcro goes bad. With
Right.
a good belt is and good shoes, same thing. It's going to cost you at least $100, somewhere between 100 and $200, but
Mhm.
it's a one-time purchase. Like if you get a good one, you're never going to have to buy another one unless, and you've got about close to 12 inches of range of waist growth and shrinkage over the course of your life. That the belt, how many inches of holes do you
It's
have?
it's 10 inches of adjustability.
Okay,
So it's one of the nerdy engineering details. It actually takes 11 holes on the belt to give you 10 inches of
right,
adjustability.
right,
A lot of belts will just have 10 holes because that, if you don't think about it, that seems like the right number to have. But then your sizing is all messed up. It's in
right.
9-inch increments instead of 10-inch increments. Um, that's my ADD kicking in
Yeah,
to have to explain that. But yeah, 11 holes, 10 inches of adjustability. And if you want more, you can always request more. That's an
sure.
easy thing for us to do.
Yeah, and so if you think about it, if you've got a 38-inch waist, then and you kind of hit it right in the middle, you're going to go down to a 33 to a 43, right? So anywhere from a waist from a 33-inch to a 43-inch, somewhere in that ballpark. If you're in that 38 range or 37 range, whatever, the chances that you would outgrow that belt or have a belt that actually gets too small is pretty rare. And so I've used the same belt. I've gained and lost 60 pounds, and I've been able to use the same belt the whole time. And one of the things I actually really like from a nutrition coaching perspective, we're always measuring the waist especially for my male clients. They're going to measure their waist. They're going to take their weight, and we want to see the waist kind of, if they're trying to lose weight, lose fat, we want the waist to come down. And a lot of times I want the weight to kind of stay the same or maybe slightly tick down, but the waist is the thing that we're looking for. The greatest test of the waist coming in is your weightlifting belt, because you wear that belt tight, right? And so for me,
Yep.
and some people may think this is anathema, I'm also one of these guys, like I highlight and mark in my Bible, which a lot of people are like, don't touch the Bible. So, but on the inside of my belt, I do the same thing. I've got a Sharpie marker, and I mark the hole that I'm at, and I put the date that I'm on, and then I can
Mhm.
see it come in, or
Right.
if I gain weight, I can see it go out. And so I like to do that. You're just marking the inside. Nobody sees the inside but you. And so it's a great test of how much your waist has actually come in or gone out. So hopefully come in. Let's talk a little bit about the buckle. So the leather is where the focus is, for belts and for manufacturers like yourself, but the buckle matters too. And so we have both a lever type belt, right, and
Correct.
a buckle belt. Is that what do you call it?
A prong belt.
Yeah,
Yeah.
prong belt. Thank you.
Yeah. Mhm.
And so why would you want to choose one over the other? What are the advantage there? What are the things to look for? Because this is the other thing I've noticed with cheaper made leather belts. They also have cheap prongs. And
Yep.
you'll often see that roller on the prong. It'll have a big split down the middle, and over time it'll open up, often come out. I mean, it breaks over time. So you want a high quality prong or lever as well. So what are we looking for there? And then why would we choose one over the other?
Yeah, we repaired a belt for a guy the other day. It was a buckle that was a belt that was made by somebody else, and the seam on his roller had
Yep.
opened up on the ends, and it was
Yep.
scratching his belt up, scratching him up. Uh, so on a prong belt, for sure, that's one of the first things you'd want to see is a seamless roller, one
Yep.
that doesn't have that seam rolling down the middle, because that has a life limit on it for sure. Um, Stainless steel is best if you can get it. Carbon steel will work, but you want to protect that from humidity because
Right. Or
it would
rust.
corrode if not. All of our prongs are stainless steel. Um, you also want to look at the rivets in terms of the hardware on the prong belt. You want a nice, large head rivet so that it can never pull through the leather.
Right.
A lot of belts will have smaller rivets and they'll just put more of them. But that doesn't help. If one pulls through, now the rest of them are suddenly carrying more
Bearing the
load, and it's
load.
only
Yep.
a matter of time before the next one comes. The lever too, we use a lever we don't make levers ourselves in our shop, but we do buy them from an American manufacturer, and they've had very, very good QC. We've never had one come in where the mechanism was either too loose or too tight,
Right.
or where the mechanism itself, the trip point, was too close to the close direction,
Right.
meaning that it wants to pop open by
Right.
itself or anything like that. Um, in terms of whether you would choose one or the other, you're making a trade off in either direction. On the prong belt, it's a little bit more difficult to buckle, because you got to pull it tight with one hand. There's a trick called the rack trick, is what I
Right.
call it, where you use the rack to wrap the tail end around and pull it away. And that makes it really easy to buckle. And the benefit is changing size. Even if you want to change size lift to lift, like you want one notch tighter on press or something like that, you just go one hole tighter.
Right.
All right. So easier to adjust, a little bit harder to buckle. The lever is kind of the opposite.
Yep.
Much easier to buckle, right? You just flip it open. You can do it with just your thumb, no problem. And you see, incidentally, you see levers used a lot in competition because of this. You may not have a rack or anything around to help you buckle it, and you don't want to think about it at all. You just want to put the belt on, flip it closed, do the lift. But the trade-off is if you want to change size, you've got to move the lever,
Right.
and that takes a screwdriver.
Yeah. 2 screws to
yep.
move. Yep.
So if you're very consistent in your waist size and you don't use different tightnesses lift to lift, the lever is very convenient. But those are the trade-offs you're making. It's ease of buckling versus ease of changing size.
Yep. Makes sense. When I first came into powerlifting, I was always using a prong belt. I switched to a lever belt over the last few years. I think yours is the only lever belt I've ever used. I've got a few of those, and I love them. I love the lever belts. And for me, I'm not somebody that there was a time when I would maybe crank my deadlift belt down a little bit tighter than I would on squat or press or something. So, but for me now, I just keep them all the same, and I love it. And it's so easy to put on. The lever, the one thing you got to be careful with the lever is because the way the leather will overlap itself, it'll sometimes kind of bite your belly skin. So you've got to get it seated in the right spot so it's not grabbing your skin. But that's pretty easy to do. I just take it. I actually don't put my lever smack in the middle. I put it very slightly to the right. It's a little easier to put on that way, where the leather and also as you come in on a belt and you have more overlap on the lever belt, you'll get more of that leather that overlaps. So as that lever comes in to, on the 8th hole, 9th hole, whatever the thing is, as it comes in, then you've got a little more overlapping belt. So then you end up with, if you got a 10 millimeter belt, you've got a lot more space. It's 20 millimeters of belt covering over up your midsection where it overlaps itself. So that's another,
that's a good point.
Maybe drawback on the lever belt, but I like it. And I like that. I actually like a little bit of that extra belt in the front. A lot of people talk about wearing the belt for their back, but I think it's certainly just as much for bracing in the front as it is in the back. And so certainly helps me set my back, but it also really helps me set my abs and my Valsalva to brace hard against the belt.
Can I ask you a question about the lever belts? Because
sure.
The only lever belts I've ever used are belts that I've produced myself, and I've never had a problem with them. But I get this question that I've never felt like I've had a really satisfying answer for, and that's the potential for a lever to pop open during a lift, which obviously would be a really bad thing.
Yeah, sure.
I've never heard of it happening with any one of our levers, but I've certainly heard of it happening.
Yep.
What's your experience with that? Have you ever had it happen?
Never. Not with yours. I've seen it happen even at meets with cheaper belts, and you can see that lever. One of the things about your levers is that they're very tight. There's not a lot of give, kind of vertically. So that lever is nice and tight, and you can kind of feel that spot as you crank that lever down. You get about halfway in, and it goes click, and it snaps shut, and it wants to stay shut. But I've seen cheaper belts that are very loose. That lever's loose, and they'll push out really hard against that lever. Sometimes they'll pop open. But with yours, I've never had that be an issue ever. Never had it pop. As a matter of fact, I mean, it doesn't. You can pop it with your thumb, but it's a pretty hard pop with your thumb to open that thing back up after a lift, which is certainly that's the direction I want it to go. I want it to be tighter and more secure. I don't want to worry about taking a big breath and going down in my squat and having the thing pop open. That's obviously a huge problem. It's the same issue. I mean, it's a bigger issue, but people with cheap wrist wraps have seen the same thing where they come down on a bench press with their wrist wraps, and that Velcro pops open. All of a sudden, the thing, and that really throws you off in a lift when you've got your wrist cranked down and the Velcro pops open. And so again, this is why we use really high quality belts, high quality leather, high quality levers. But yes, I've never had that issue ever with Dominion. I think I have 3 lever belts. I think I have 2 4-inch and 1 3-inch lever, as well as a prong 4-inch and a prong 3-inch as well from Dominion. So I think I've got 5, and my wife has got 2 as well. So I probably have 7 across, and we've never had an issue ever. And that roller, the buckle is the same sort of thing. You can kind of feel when it's like when you get a cheap weight plate that goes onto a barbell and there's a lot of play on it, right? So it's that that inside diameter of the plate is significantly bigger, a little bit bigger than the outside diameter of the barbell. And so it goes on there and it's kind of wiggly. Really good plates, like competition level Olympic weightlifting plates, the kind of stuff they would use in the Olympics. You can barely even get them you've got to really turn them exactly right to slide onto the barbell. There is zero play.
Tolerance.
Yep. And it's the same thing with your buckles, with your prongs, with your levers. there's very little tolerance there. They're tight and smooth, and they grab exactly where they're supposed to. And I think if you've got a belt and you feel a lot of that play, then that probably tells you you've got a cheap belt, or at least a cheap buckle or a cheap lever. And so, yeah, I've never had an issue there with your levers ever. So they've stayed very secure.
Okay, very cool.
Excellent. Let's talk. If somebody wants to buy a belt from you, what's the process from identifying the type of belt they need? How do they size it? I know you've got all that stuff on your website at dominionstrength.com, correct? Dominionstrength.com.
Yeah, dominionstrengthtraining.com.
Oh, Dominion Strength Training. Sorry, dominionstrengthtraining.com. So yeah, somebody wants to buy a belt. Walk me through the process of what they choose, why they choose it, how they size it. And I think I get that question a lot as well. Like, I'm kind of between a medium and a large, maybe whatever the thing is. How do you discuss that?
Well, you mentioned like 38 inches before. So somebody came to me and said 38 inches. And we have a video that walks people step by step through this. But if your waist measurement around your belly button, not sucking in or pushing out, is 38 inches, you're going to wear that belt probably 2 notches tighter than that. So you're going to wear it at 36.
Yep.
All right. So 36, you're going to be right in the middle of one of our large belts, a medium belt, which runs 30 to 40. So that 36-inch hole, you're going to be just one hole off of being right in the center.
Yep.
So that's how I would go as far as the sizing in terms of length. The next size is the width. And like I said, we're seeing a trend towards the thinner belts in terms of width. Like instead of a 4-inch, somebody might have used before, closer to a 3-inch, down to a 2.5-inch. What I tell people there is I give a rule of thumb, which is very rough, but if people don't even know where to start, I say if you're between 5'4" and 6 feet, and most people are, a 3-inch is probably the place to start for you.
Yep.
Now, there are reasons that we might violate this completely, but that's a good range. If you're above 6 feet, a 4-inch starts to become a factor, even if you're brand new to belts. If you're below 5'4", it starts to make sense maybe that a 2.5-inch would be more appropriate than a 3-inch. It depends on how much body mass you have. The more body mass that you have, especially around your belly, the less chance you're going to have of impinging on your hips or your ribs or your hips.
Right.
And so you could probably tolerate a wider belt. On the other hand, the leaner you are, the more problem you might have. The older you are also might skew you towards a thinner belt. So there's all these different modifications we might put on top of that kind of rule of thumb. But those are the first two things, the size in terms of length and the size in terms of width of the belt. That's what we'd want to decide first.
And I often look at, we've taught for years about anthropometry, the way people are built. If you've got a very short torso, you're going to want to lean more towards like a 3-inch belt or a smaller belt. And so you might even be like 5'10", but have a long torso and short legs. You're kind of built for squatting, not built for deadlifting. Then you would tend to move more towards a 4-inch belt. So that if you're a long torsoed person, you're the kind of person that has to buy long t-shirts, like the longer shirts, 4 inches is good. If you're somebody that's like, your just torso is really short, you got really long legs, that's where a 3-inch probably works really well. How much overlap is there in, you were talking about if you're 38-inch, you're going to probably wear it at about 36. And that medium you said goes from 30 to 40, correct? What is the large? There's some overlap there, right? The large doesn't start at 40 and go to 50. It's going to start at what, like 34 or something, go to 44?
It starts right in the middle. So the medium goes 30 to 40. The large picks up at 35, right in the middle, and goes to 45. And then the XL picks right up at 40 and goes to 50.
Got it.
And then it's the exact same thing going down. So you can always find a belt within that overlap. It'll generally be 2 belts that you could pick from.
Right.
And so that's where we point people towards, if they know what their training goals are going to be, like I'm really skinny, I know I'm going to bulk. Okay, well, then we can go for the larger size.
Right.
More frequently, it's that, hey, I want to lose some inches.
Yeah.
So we're going to go for the smaller belt. And I will tell you, just from our experience, 99% of the time when we have a sizing error and we have to do like a return exchange sort of thing, it's because somebody got a belt that was too large as opposed to too small. So when in doubt, go with the smaller one for sure.
Yep. That's great. What's the manufacturing process look like for you guys? Like, take me through, like, from start to finish. What does making a belt look like?
Well, we have full hides that come in the shop. So we'll get the hides in, we'll measure them for length. We'll grade them for quality because the grade is going to determine what kind of belt it can become. The length will determine obviously what size it can become. For like a single ply where you're going to be able to see all sides of it, whether we dye it or oil it,
Yep.
it's going to have to be A plus on the front and the back. If it's a B, which would be, good on the top side, but maybe there's a cosmetic issue or something on the inside, that could be a double ply because we're going to
Right.
put another piece of leather on top of
Right.
it. And as long as it's just a cosmetic thing, there's no issue with that whatsoever. We've still got an A side on the other side. So we'll take those full hides, we'll run them through a strap cutter, and that's going to cut this into 2.5, 3 inch, 4 inch straps. Once we have those, we're going to pull orders. We're going to make what we call a build sheet. So we will sort all of our components based on what that build sheet says we need to be making this week. We'll have the straps sitting there. We'll have suede if we have belts that are going to have suede on them,
Yep.
either on the inside or the outside. And then we'll prep all these. The strap is not necessarily the thickness, rather, that you need it. So the single ply, we're not going to take any thickness off that. Everything else is going to run through a machine called a splitter. So what that does is, if you think about what a planer does to
Yep.
wood,
That's what I was gonna
takes
say.
thickness down
Like a wood
evenly.
planer. Yeah.
Yep,
But for leather.
a splitter does that except for leather. So we will profile all the straps exactly as we need them to be. Then they will go through, if it's a single ply that gets dyed, we'll do dyeing. If they need to be glued, we'll glue them together. And then it's all the finishing touches. They're going to need to be sanded. They'll need to be edge beveled, all those different things to get them ready for stitching if they need to be stitched. And so at that point, we will stitch the belts that are going to get stitched. And then it moves from there to final assembly, where we do our final check of everything, make sure there's no issues anywhere. And I think the only step that I missed is, after we do all the edge finishing and everything, we punch all the holes and stuff
Right.
with a clicker press and everything. So that's kind of simplified overview. That's basically the process. We start with full hides coming in one door and finished belts going out the other door.
So those single ply that you say are, in that 5 to 6 millimeter range, that's what they're at once they've been cut into strips. That's why there's some flex, because there's a little bit of thickness difference in the hides.
Yeah, when the hides come in, they're pretty uniform.
Okay.
From end to end, you're going to have about 6 to 7 millimeters across that length.
Got it.
And if you have a leather strap, that's going to be, 50 inches long, and it only varies a millimeter, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
That's pretty consistent in leather terms. So that would be fine for us in terms of a single ply. If for some reason it's thinner, then that's going to get kicked out. We're not going to use that as a single ply. It can become a double ply because those straps get thinned anyways.
Right.
But those are all kinds of things that we're going to be looking for.
Got it. Any unexpected challenges that you had over the last 10 years? I mean, you guys had to go through COVID like everybody else. Like, anything you run into in the manufacturing process that was just difficult as a business owner?
Sure.
Let's hear it.
Well, during COVID, especially, when it first became apparent that there were going to be some things happening in terms of shutdowns and all that, I got on the phone with all of our suppliers for anybody that makes anything critical. And I'm like, how much do you have of this? How much do you have
Yep.
of that? And probably the most extreme one was our roller buckles. We ended up having to buy about 2 years of supply
Wow.
all at one time because they were getting ready to run out and they had no clue when they were going to get
Yeah,
more.
more supply chain. Yep.
Yeah. And we went through a period of time where we were selling buckles to some competitors just to help them out a little bit because
Right.
they weren't able to get buckles. So that was the main thing. Like, to be honest, at least it was good that we are able to manage that at the component level, as opposed to being somebody who doesn't actually make their stuff.
Right.
They just put in an order to a supplier.
Right.
And
Especially overseas, China or something, and they're
exactly.
getting like,
And,
oh
and
man, we're
you would
in
be
trouble.
completely beholden to how they're managing that.
Right.
And if they didn't manage it well and you say, hey, I need 1,000 more belts, they say, well, we can't do it.
Yep.
We don't have this rivet or whatever.
Right.
Whereas we were able to manage it at the component level, and we could source another component somewhere if we had to, and always be on top of, like, hey, if we think it's going to be 6 months before we get these again, let's go ahead and order 9 months just to be sure. And thankfully we were in a position to do that, and we never had a problem where we just couldn't make something that we had an order for.
Awesome.
So yeah, I think with COVID stuff, tariff stuff, all these
Yep.
different things, what it's really taught me is, you know, just expect the unexpected.
Sure.
Be conservative. Use some good, business principles and some good common sense,
Yeah.
and yeah, just be ready for what's going to happen next, because that's the only thing you can be certain of, is that something will happen next.
That's right. Well,
So
I think it's really a, an excellent tale for you guys that you're so vertically integrated, like you said, to be able to make everything in the United States, in Florida yourself. Your hands are on it. You literally just have to organize at the component level. So when something like that happens, you're not beholden to trying to get something over in a ship from across the Pacific Ocean. I mean, I just can't
yeah,
imagine how difficult that was for so many businesses. So,
right.
last question: what do you wear? What's your personal preference? Lever, prong, what width? What do you wear for your own training?
I wore a lever for about 2 years because I felt like I needed to, as a being a tester, if I'm going to make these things, I need to make sure that I understand everything about it, see if there's
Sure.
anything I need to improve. I ended up going back to the prong. I started with the prong before I ever made belts. I like the classic look of it.
Yeah.
I like the ease of being able to change. I do usually go a notch tighter, like on a deadlift,
Yep.
maybe on a press, depends on the day. um, I just like the prong, for no particular reason other than just I like it. um, so
Love it.
and
And
I'll
I've
tell
done
you,
the opposite, but I love
yeah,
both.
yeah. There's no wrong or right answer
Yeah.
there. Just preferences really, and trade offs. So the
Awesome.
one thing I was going to mention, a lot of the questions that we were talking about today, and a lot more that, like, I wrote down a few that we didn't even get to. A big push that we're doing this year, since we're getting so many more customers that are newer lifters and certainly first time belt buyers, we're trying to create a catalog of all these questions in video form
Oh,
on
nice.
our YouTube, basically. The goal is pretty much any question that somebody might email us, we'll be able to give them a short answer, but also say, we actually made a video where we do a deep dive on this. And if you want to check that out,
Oh, I love
here
it.
it is right here. I don't know if you mind me mentioning
No,
what
please
that
do.
is, but
How do we find your YouTube channel?
yeah, it's just Dominion Strength Training on YouTube.
Perfect.
We've got a bunch of videos up already. We're going to keep adding to it, and it's a deep dive on every question we've talked about so far, and a lot of them that we haven't.
Awesome.
So if somebody's wondering where to start with a belt, that's an excellent place to start.
Love it. So while you guys are listening, let me tell you a little bit about Blake has set up a specific coupon code for the Mondays with Matt listeners. So you can go to dominionstrengthtraining.com. You can use coupon code MATT, M-A-T-T. They get you 10% off a purchase of any belt at dominionstrengthtraining.com. Again, dominionstrengthtraining.com. Discount code MATT, M-A-T-T. Get you 10% off. Thank you so much. We always have a $10 off coupon using the coupon code LOGIC, but he actually created even a better one for the listeners for today. So thank you so much for doing that. Anything else you want to talk to the listeners about, or tell them about what you're doing in the future, or anything you want to promote, feel free to do it.
Yeah, the main thing is we're trying to build out that catalog this year of our video content. I've got two little babies at home now, so
Yeah, congrats.
between manufacturing and getting that video content done, that's going to be probably about it for the rest of this year.
Sure.
If anybody wants to see the custom stuff we can do, that's on our Instagram. That's just at Dominion Strength on Instagram. We kind of just use that as a catalog of pictures of custom belts that we
Sure.
do and different things like that. So
And
yeah,
you do some really nice belts we didn't even get into. I mean, you could do all sorts of like buffalo hide and all kinds of fun leathers and things like that. I've got
yeah, I
one
can't
of
believe
those.
how quick the time went by.
I
I had
know,
to,
right? 30 minutes goes quickly. But yeah,
right?
so you can see tons of stuff. And then you really made your name. I mean, I think the reason you landed such great product market fit is back in, just as you were saying, if you wanted a belt fast when you came into the market, you were going to get a crappy belt. And if you wanted a good belt, you often would have to wait, 3 months to get a belt.
Yeah,
And so obviously you've got lots of custom options. You got to wait a little bit longer, but you still have pretty fast turnaround time, and you tend to keep belts in stock. And so I always want to send my clients there because I don't want my clients getting a belt in 8 weeks. I want to get a
right.
belt pretty quick. And so you have options there, and you're pretty clear about how quick the turnaround time is for the type of belt that they buy as well. So obviously if you're going to buy something that's, fancy buffalo hide, custom made, it's going to take a little longer to get, but I've never heard of it taking 3 months. It's not going to
No,
take you guys that long to get a belt. So it turns around pretty quick. And so it's the best option. Again, American made, great people, friends of the podcast, friends of Barbell Logic for many years. at Dominion Strength Training. Everything's being done by Blake and his team, his crew. How big is your crew now? How many people do you have?
We got 3 of us.
Yeah, so that's
Yeah.
listen, that's the way to do it, man. Don't have 20, but I
Yeah.
remember when it was just you. And so Katie working for you guys too, or is she mom at this point?
Yeah, she's mostly stay-at-home mom and doing
Yeah.
some admin stuff when she can, and my brother works with me in the shop most days. So
Awesome. Excellent.
yep.
So, well, thank you so much for being on the show, guys. Blake, and um, love what you guys are doing, and it's always have love your belt, super high quality. Man, I've never had a complaint ever. And so, you know,
Awesome. That's awesome to hear.
when I send my clients, again, it's the buy once, cry once sort of thing. And it's not even that expensive. So you think about, you know, you might drop $100. You might drop, if you want to get a fancy custom belt, it might be $200, something in there. You're going to buy a belt for life. It's going to last. You stand behind your product. I've never heard of anything tearing up, but if something tears up, I'm sure you'll fix it and make it right. But I'm sure that's very few and far between. So thank you so much for being on Mondays with Matt this week. Thank you all for listening. As always, we'll take your questions throughout the week. You can send them in on social media, on any of our Barbell Logic social media accounts, or on YouTube, and we'll get to those next week. Next week, we're going to have Mike Pantile. This should be a fun conversation. What it means to be a strong, virtuous man. Mike is a coach, a Catholic men's coach, a strength coach, and he's Catholic. As you all know, that I'm very Protestant Calvinist. We're great buddies. It'll be a great time of coming together, the Catholics and the Protestants, and talking about what it means to be a strong, virtuous man next week on Mondays with Matt. So that is another Mondays with Matt for this week. I hope you guys have a great week moving forward, and we'll see you next Monday.
Very cool. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.